When I was in high school and it was time to choose a foreign language to study, I enthusiastically signed up for Latin. When the school year started, my Latin class had been canceled because there were not enough students who signed up for the course. I was very disappointed. Little did I know that over 20 years later, I would be given the opportunity to learn Latin as an adult alongside my children. My topic today is the importance of teaching Latin in schools. If you have never studied Latin, you might think that this is a topic about which you know nothing. However, if you are able to speak English, you already know quite a bit about Latin. I am qualified to discuss this subject because I have studied and taught Latin for 9 years and because of the research that I have completed for this presentation. There are 3 main points that I will discuss in the body of my speech. First, I will provide you with a historical overview of the teaching of Latin in schools. My second point will explore the advantages of this teaching. Finally, my third point will investigate the disadvantages. In discussing teaching Latin in school, let's look at the history of my topic area. My first main point is the history behind the teaching of Latin in schools. As Tor Jansen states in his book, A Natural History of Latin, the history of Latin began about 2,700 years ago. Latin began as a spoken language. It has been a written language for around 2,500 years. Due to the lack of technology and the inability to mass produce the written language, the ancient Romans did not have access to textbooks. Therefore, Latin was taught orally through literature and lectures. According to Henry Wingate in his 2013 article in the Classical World, up until the mid-1600s, Latin was spoken almost exclusively in classrooms and on playgrounds in Europe and England at the lower levels of grammar schools for nearly 1,000 years. However, it was seldom, if ever, taught as the primary language in the classroom. For the first 2 years of study, students were taught the construction of Latin and the explanation of Latin grammar in English. They learned vocabulary and Latin grammar forms through chants and memorization. It was not until the 3rd year of study that they began conversational Latin. As Wingate goes on to explain, the direct or natural method of teaching Latin began to emerge in European countries around the 20th century. The main principle for the natural or direct method of teaching a language is that the mother tongue is banished from the classroom. The absolute priority is oral teaching. This method requires a very skilled Latin teacher. L. Dean Webb states in his book, The History of American Education, an American Experiment, it was due to the influence of the church in schools in colonial America that Latin instruction in grammar schools was prioritized above English instruction. Additionally, Latin teachers were paid more than English teachers and were given more resources for their classrooms. Now that we have explored some of the history behind teaching Latin in schools, I will move on to my next point. In my second main point, I will look at the advantages of teaching Latin in schools. According to an article published in Education Research Quarterly, Lisa R. Holliday states that studies have shown that Latin not only expands children's vocabulary, it also improves cognitive skills, pronunciation, and reading comprehension. The study of Latin results in a higher level of thinking and intellectual abilities. Recent studies have shown that studying Latin improves academic performance. Some examples of these findings are as follows. Math skills such as problem solving, computation, and concepts are improved. English skills are higher. Latin students are better prepared to learn other Romance languages such as French and Spanish than those who have not studied any Latin. The study of Latin has also shown to improve SAT scores. As Holliday also points out, when teaching Latin, teachers compare and contrast the grammar and vocabulary of Latin and English. This promotes the deeper teaching of English grammar. This is a method I have used in my own teaching of Latin as it enhances the understanding of English and builds vocabulary. Now that we have seen some of the advantages of teaching Latin in schools, I will move on to some of the disadvantages in my third main point. In her study published in the Cambridge University Press, Louise Walker found that Latin students find it particularly difficult to retain knowledge in their need to learn vocabulary. Students perceive Latin as difficult. They don't feel like they have a very good memory. Students perceive learning a language as boring and find it hard to motivate themselves to learn Latin. Studying Latin takes a lot of time, and the pressure of other classes make it difficult to succeed. As Paul R. Murphy states in an article in the Classical Journal, while enrollment in high school Latin is up in the state of Ohio, many schools are having trouble finding college graduates to teach these classes. Most schools can only hire a Latin teacher who will teach Latin in addition to another subject, resulting in Latin becoming the secondary subject within their whole program. Because the demand for college classes in Latin has not been high, these classes have been offered infrequently. Thus, the traditional place of Latin has been destroyed. It is increasingly difficult to interest students in college to prepare to be Latin teachers. While this is not a disadvantage of Latin itself, this does show a disadvantage for the study of Latin as a discipline. In conclusion today, I discussed the topic of teaching Latin in schools. There were 3 main points that I focused on in the body of my speech. First, I gave you a historical overview of teaching Latin in schools. My second point, I looked at the advantages of this teaching. And in the third point, I looked at the disadvantages. I hope that you have learned a little more about the pros and cons of teaching Latin in schools. Thank you.